on live. I have my paper, I have my pen, and I am ready to go.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Duzie Live.
Let's see this morning who will be the first person to type in where they are located. Where are they located? I already see some people in the house, so let's see who's going to be the first person.
Oh, this is always a great challenge.
I was the first person to type in the welcome. Please type in the chat where you are located, but I want to see who of you is the first person that shows up on the chat.
Good morning. We're happy to come.
Irene
is coming in from the Philippines. Good morning.
Welcome.
And Helen from the UAE and Roseanne from the Netherlands. You are the first three in.
Nice.
Welcome in.
Special prize for you, and you can go get yourself whatever you want.
And here it is here. My prize is a tea this morning. Benjamin from Poland, and we have Rob coming in from the UK. Thank you for joining us. This is an excellent day. We are coming in from Seattle on the very west coast. Currently, it is 6 a.m. for us.
And I just looked out the window, and guess what? It's raining. So Seattle and rain, they go together.
So yesterday, we went with Dakota, our grandson, and Joshua and Saskia to the zoo. And we absolutely love zoos. It was a beautiful day. Sunny, so I'm glad we got rain today instead of yesterday.
The closest I've ever been to a grizzly bear. I mean, it was just right on the other side of the wall.
A glass this big.
So much fun. Good morning, Mom. Good morning, Dad.
Yeah, so let's see. David Taylor is coming in from the UK. Love the tea. Yes, this morning's flavor is ginger and peppermint. So I love that one. Hannah's coming in. Oh, Hannah, what a surprise. It is raining in the UK.
I didn't get the report from the Netherlands. Is it raining in the Netherlands as well? Maybe everyone can take a moment and just put in what is your weather report this morning from where you're at.
Well, they're not morning. Most of everybody is at a different time zone.
What's the weather right now wherever you're at?
Great. We're so glad that you've taken your time to join us here today, those of you who are live in the chat and those who are coming in by a replay of some sort. We're glad that you've joined us, and thank you for coming.
Today is a really special subject for us, because as we have been looking at this whole subject of self-care, it's like there's a lot of people talking about self-care, but not a lot of people talking about self-care within the body of Christ. And so it was a very interesting time to research, looking at it. And there are a lot of different areas in our life, but we're just going to look today at the mind, the body, and the spirit. And you can continue looking at other areas and how to self-care for yourself. But that's what we're focusing on today.
Yeah, that's right. You know, your life is a remarkable story, an adventure that only you can create.
And we exist to motivate and equip you to live fully alive.
Today in this Fully Alive, as Dan said, we're talking about self-care, mind, body, and spirit.
Why don't you start to tell us a little bit about self-care as you were growing up?
Yeah, well, I also just want to, before I do that, I just want to remind you that here in Duzie Live, this is an interactive experience, and it comes from what is going on here with us. It also is happening in the chat as you respond to what we're talking about, and you respond just straight up to each other and have a great time with one another. But Duzie Live is always different and unique because of the interactive experience. So we look forward to seeing how you interact. Now, we know that there's a number of people that haven't said hello. Some people just like to watch and do nothing in the chat space, and that is also absolutely okay. But it's always better when we interact together.
Yeah. So anytime, if you just want to say, even you agree with something, just, yep, that's okay. Just something in the chat is great, so we know who are we actually talking to, and is it landing where we think it's going. So here we go.
Yeah. So I just want to start by showing here we are talking about self-care, mind, body, and spirit.
And again, remember, there's more areas of self-care. These are just 3 that we're going to hit today.
So this is the verse that we're basing today off of, and that has really triggered this in our hearts and minds. It comes from Mark 12, verse 30 and 31. It's something that Jesus said. And Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.
It's interesting in many translations, and in the same way, love your neighbor as yourself. So there is this, God is definitely first, but in the same way, love your neighbor as yourself.
And I think this God, neighbor, yourself, the combination. And for me growing up, I grew up in a great home and a Christian foundation, and it was always God, neighbor, and self. And for me in particular, I knew that the God piece was number one. And then you love your neighbor. I come from a big family, 8 kids in my family. And so loving my neighbor and my siblings were very important. And then all the other people, my parents were very involved in the church and ministry. And so it was really emphasized to love others. And I, just in the core of my being, I also just love others. But the yourself piece of it didn't become very prominent and really didn't become, well, such an important thing. It was all about God and neighbor and yourself. And I've developed rhythms that help me love God and my neighbor because that's what I want to do and I choose to do. But the yourself was left really, well, just like if there's anything left over, give it to yourself.
It's interesting. Not too long ago, earlier this week, actually, someone had said, just in passing, they said, and just remember, you have to love God and others. And it was like I leaned in, like, and yourself
as yourself.
But it was one of those things that growing up for me, I heard a lot of messages. Maybe every other message was about love God, love God, love God. And there was a lot of message about love your neighbor, love your neighbor, love your neighbor. But I still to this day, I don't remember a single message ever about how to love yourself and how to love yourself well. And the fact is, you can't love your neighbor really well unless you love yourself well. So that's what we're going to dive in today, because here on Duzie Live, we like to talk about things that maybe no one else is really talking about.
Or talking about with such support. So self-care, according to Wikipedia, is actions and attitudes which contribute to the maintenance of well-being and personal health and promote human development.
Ooh.
So there's a lot in there, but it's actions and attitudes, it's internal, it's external, it's maintaining well-being, just not one time, but it's taking care of yourself and promoting human development.
So I hope right now in the chat, as you get thoughts, that you would actually be putting them in, because we want to bounce back and forth between this presentation that we've put together and also your thoughts. So where are we going together today in Duzie Live?
So let's hear from you. How has it been for you growing up in your life, maybe currently, of those three, God, others, self? What would you say has been most prominent in your own life so far? Maybe you've heard it from teaching.
Most prominent.
Well, like what has been the most important? Or maybe it's like God, others, self. Maybe some of you have been on this self-care and that piqued your interest, or you haven't been taking care of yourself. And so you maybe haven't piqued the interest of like, oh, self-care, what does that look like? Come to Duzie Live, or you're just here to contribute. So write in the chat, write one of those words, God, others, self.
Which is easiest for you, or the most?
What would you like it to be?
I just don't know what you're asking me for.
Well, for me, I'm just going to put God, because for me, God has been the one that has been the most important, and that has been the emphasis. Love God, and then all the others fall in there. So I'm going to just write that myself. What about for you guys?
I think for me, I would have to say definitely God and neighbor. But I think lately, the place that God's taken me over and over again as we look to launching the Fully Live Revolution in the end of August is this whole idea of, but how do you care for yourself? How do you live fully alive? And so I have to say lately for me, it would have to be, I've been focusing on where does the word or whatever tell me to love myself. So that would be my most recent input into my life for sure.
Okay, so I'll just write that in for you, Dan. And we've got it coming in the chat. Thank you for typing in there. All right, let's see what we've got here so far. Cheryl says a lot of emphasis on God and others.
Yeah.
Alice says others. Helen says others. Roseanne, God and others. Lydia, a lot about God and others. Darlene is others. Hannah is others. Rob said, I think it was always taught along the lines of self-sacrifice in order to love others. Emphasis on others, but coming from a love of God. I'm very much with you, Rob. That has been my whole concept. Direne says, God and others, excluding myself. Yeah, so some of us have like self is like way down the line. And yet, if we don't have the rhythms and the values and the behaviors that go together with taking care of ourselves, there won't be a well flowing up.
It was interesting. When we lived in Poland, we brought a team in, an international team. And there was this one guy, and he had come straight out of, I think, seminary to us. And he was the kind of guy, he had every answer. And it was always interesting to dialogue with him. But he never really got this concept that he should be loving himself as well as his neighbor. His main word was always brokenness. I just have to be more broken. I have to be more broken. And I always would think, well, did God create you so you'd be broken? I don't know what creator would create a masterpiece, something that he would say is very good humanity, that he would be desiring to be broken. Now I understand that I want to come to that place where I'm willing to learn. I totally understand that. But to live under that mentality that I remember he would always say, well, what a worm am I? And it's like, actually, if you go outside and pick up a rock, you'll see a worm. And God created the worm, but he also created you as something very different than that. And I remember us going back and forth. And there's some people, they've been raised with that mentality that, well, I'm only human, as if that is a worthless commodity. I mean, the greatest thing God created was human. And we need to live into that. So this is a little bit now, if we embrace that, how do we care for ourselves?
So my friend Elaine and I were having a chat this week about, okay, what is the combination of self-discovery and self-actualization and knowing our gifts and our abilities and self-care, even like we're talking about today? Like, where does God come in the midst of that? And where do others come in the midst of that? And if we're focusing on ourselves, will that become our God? Will it be a self-God focus? And it was a good challenge because the combination of loving God and loving others and loving yourself and how we work that holistically is really one of our challenges for discussion today. And we really appreciate you putting your thoughts and your comments in the chat, because we learn from one another as we have these deep discussions. So, how can we love God and love others and love ourselves in combination? Of course, we're going to be talking a little bit about all of those areas, mind, body, and spirit, how they're connected in caring for ourselves. But in the meantime, the balance of us. And some days we need to have more balance in one area than others.
Yeah, something I've been seeing, I just wrote this down, is the more I discover how fearfully and wonderfully I am made, the more worship I believe my life brings towards God. Because if I am fearfully and wonderfully made, if I am woven together, if I am the craftsmanship of God, it's like, oh wow, God, because I didn't make me. I mean, I've made a lot of things, but I didn't make me. And so the wonder, the awe, the more I love myself, I find it bringing me closer and closer to a God who made me. And wow, God, well done.
Yeah. So do I take care of myself so I'm full enough to love God and others, or does God fill me? And for me, I'm a people lover, so being with people also fills my tank. That's being with people and loving people is a bit of my self-care as well. How do we operate from a full and overflowing to others, or does God and others fill us so that the combination of all of them overflow and fill one another?
Let me
they
just
like
give you,
ebb and flow together.
Let me just give you a little dad report. Being here in Seattle the last few weeks, I've had a lot of chance to watch my boys, Joshua and Josiah. Now, there has been one time when I was sitting in a chair outside watching them play ping pong or hiking or something like that, where they came and they just knelt down in front of me and said, "Oh, Dad, thank you so much for creating me." They didn't do that to me. They honor me by living fully alive. And last night, I was just sitting there. Joshua was playing ping pong. And I was sitting there in this chair watching him. And I was just so full of life seeing my son being so full of life. And I think we don't get that picture with God, that God is watching us. And he is thrilled when we are loving life, when we are embracing life, when we are loving who he's created us to be, and we're walking in that. Mm-hmm. That's just from a father's point of view. I just noticed over the last couple weeks, just that. They're mine, and they are alive. I think God does that, and we don't necessarily see that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I've had that same sentiment. I'm not a father. I'm a mother, but I'm just going to go to the chat here. We've got some ideas humming here. Thank you for putting it there. Darlene said, I agree with Dan and Susie, but thankfully, gradually, this self-exclusion is changed over time as I learn self-care step by step. Yeah. Awesome. Roseanne said, if I think about it better, I feel like my parents always taught me to love myself first. Actually, I remember that I've accepted myself like who God made me at a really young age.
So good.
Yeah, great foundation there, Roseanne. And Helen, I think also understanding how each one influenced the other will make us more aware of how important each one is. In opening our perspective, we can see things for each of those three perspectives. That's right. They're all very interwoven. I agree with you completely. And thanks for that, Helen. Yeah, so I just want to share, let's see, here we go. Benefits of self-care, according to Botanical Health, says slowing down, taking care of yourself makes you more productive. Self-care will help boost your immune system. And who doesn't need that right now in this season of our life? And self-care improves your self-compassion or love for yourself and caring for yourself and what you need. And 4, you'll find out who you really are. How many times do you stop and think, what do I love to do? So taking care of yourself and what you love to do as well. And the number 5, and this talks about the interrelatedness that we're talking about, you'll have more to give others, not less.
Now, we're not promoting here this morning, you go out and start being selfish. But we're saying you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You need to care for yourself. And that first one that Susie just read just hit me because I am a doer. I love to do.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is when I am doing a lot of things, I don't get as much done. It is very true. And it's hard for me to admit that as a doer. But when I slow down, what I do is more important. It's not urgent. It's important and productive.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about self-care starting with our mind in just a moment. But before that, we want to see a video. And here's just sort of a funny, interesting video that comes.
Do you know BuzzFeed? I don't know if you know the BuzzFeed. They took a survey of people and they said, what is it that is.
What tips would you give for self-care? Well, what helps you take care of yourself?
And so this was the result of a survey. Some things I agree with, some things but
let's use it as a talking point, shall we? So here is self-care tips.
right. We are back, I think.
Oops. There we go.
Now, I some of those things I definitely agree with. There were a couple face masks. Never tried that. I don't think I ever will. I don't think that brings me a lot of life. Crystal healing. I like going into caves and exploring and seeing them, but I don't get into that at all. And yoga, I don't think I would do that as much as yogurt. To me, a yogurt would be far more self-care than yoga. Because I tried it once and I hurt so bad.
I love that on that list of self-care was pajamas and fluffy blankets and chocolate milk. Did you like the chocolate milk one?
Was good. I can't really drive long distance without chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk is a big piece of it. I also love that in the midst of self-care, we don't normally think of that, was friends. Many of us, as we include this combination of our neighbor and other people, that is a piece of our self-care as well.
I like the fear that David has written down here. I think we are too afraid. Now get this. I think we are too afraid of becoming arrogant and proud and boastful about ourselves that we instead learn how to hate ourselves. Ooh, well said, David.
Whoa. And David also says, if we believe God is love and love is healthy, as the Corinthians verses say, then to say it, love is patient, love is kind, and to love myself is to be patient and kind to myself is more than okay. Okay, that is a hashtag far out, David. Great quote right there. Ben has a piece of wisdom for you.
That's good.
Dan, a face mask will change your life. You have to give it a chance. The fresh skin feeling is incredible. All right, I'm going to find him Ben.
I did put cucumbers on my eyes one time, and they burnt. So we'll see where we go on that.
Okay. So anybody else have any responses about that? Anything that you saw there that you want to agree or disagree with? We're happy with that as well. And then meanwhile, let's jump into mind. So self-care, we're going to talk about mind, body, and spirit. And let's start with our mind. So when we came up with a few of the ideas, this is some of the things that we thought of. When we care for our mind, this is just a launching point, a starting of what could be. And we want to hear from you in the chat. How do you care for yourself when we think about our mind?
So here's one. Make a list of positive affirmations. Now, I've done this before, and it started off quite hard, where I actually took my journal out and I said, I want to fill a page of things I really like about me. And it was like, I better sit down for this. This will take a little bit. But it was such a great thing, because the more you look at it, you're like, wow, I am blessed. I am thankful. Thank you, God. Thank you to my parents. Thank you for those who brought this into my life. You begin to, I believe, break out in thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the first two, like the positive versus the negative, especially when you're talking about self-care, that coming from a perspective of positivity is so helpful. And the second one on our list of starting points for this is confront your negative thoughts. So allow God to search us, allow ourselves to search ourselves, and find out what are those repeating, echoing thoughts, especially the ones that are negative, that we need to grab a hold of. We need to reframe, maybe in the positive affirmation sense of it, and confront it head on. In this particular area, I need God and other people to help me. This is where the combination is so important. Confronting the negative thoughts or negative perspectives that are spiraling me down. And in 1 Corinthians, it talks about capturing those thoughts and making them obedient to Christ, because that is caring for ourselves when we confront these negative thoughts.
Susie talked about spiraling down. And I know of sometimes when Susie starts some self-talk, which is negative. And I've learned from experience, it's not best at that time to step in and go, oh no, look at all these good things, because we get into a little dialogue. But sometimes I just say, but what is true?
Yeah.
And it's a car with the brakes on. What's true? And I watch Susie then begin to think and write and say, well, it's true that I I'm really good at this. Yeah. And I let her build that support structure rather than me tell her, because I want her dependent on me, but at the same time, I want her to be able to speak some things over herself and moving this negative thought into what is really true about myself and embrace those things.
Yeah, and David said, what do you find is the best way to notice your negative thoughts? For me, it's journaling. And this is a little notebook. And if you didn't watch, we're in a part of Duzie Live last week. We were talking about being fully alive as single. And David, who's here with us, and also his brother Matt and Michaela were highlighted. We were asking them. And one of the things that Matt told me about, which just keeps resonating with me, is he has a what went well journal where he listens to himself. And these are some of the parts that he says he does. He grounds himself in who he is and whose he is. Like, what is God's perspective of him? What is the truth about him? And then he writes what he's grateful for today. He writes a heartbeat of the day, like a timeline, how he felt, high, low, and emotional words of the day are some of the things that he wrote. And I've been trying to challenge myself in my journal. So journaling, David, is one of the best ways for me to notice. I write down what's been going on, what I'm thinking. I haven't done this in a while, and I should do it. I love to get up and do what's called morning pages. While my brain is still fresh and waking up, I just free write in my journal. And that's probably the best way to understand what's going on inside out and begin to confront and notice. And then if you have somebody that you're doing life with, they can also help you, like Dan said, but best if they don't pound you with it.
Got a good one from Rob coming in here.
Okay, so Rob says, it's hard to take thoughts captive without recognizing thoughts that come automatically. So part of self-care is recognizing thoughts and being curious about them. Why do I think this? Where does it come from?
Good thought.
Yeah. I had a friend, Erin, a number of years ago when I lived in Michigan, and I would say like, oh, this is this or that about me. I don't feel good, or, you know, like, oh, this, my body shape isn't this. And she always asked me, who told you that? I was like, I don't know. And I think that's where did it come from? Who said that first to you, or where did you catch that from?
I think some of these recognized thoughts, Rob, they're thoughts that we've told ourselves for a long time. And so the voice becomes so common that we actually believe it. And I love that thought about recognizing those thoughts and actually having a conversation about those thoughts that seem to pull us down, seem to move us away from self-care, self-love, and confront those. And whose voice is that? Because that is not a true voice.
Yeah. Where did that come from? Who influenced you to think that, especially when those things are negative thoughts and they're spiraling you down? It's really important to be aware.
Yeah. I agree with Helen. That's super powerful.
Yeah. So the third part on this particular list is make a gratitude list. So what are you thankful for? Positive affirmations about ourselves, confronting, being aware, recognizing, and then like the fight is on for these negative thoughts, and make a gratitude list. What am I thankful for?
Let's just stop here for a moment. In the chat, if you would, I want you to write down 3 things. 3. That's this many. 3 things that you are grateful for. Gratitude is grateful for.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
About yourself.
For yourself. Oh,
for yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
What are you grateful for? What gratitude do you have? 3 for yourself. Put it in the chat. I dare you.
Would this be like a little bit of a combination between positive affirmations and gratitude? Like
speak out a few things. 3.
Not just being grateful for something else, like I am grateful for you, Dan, but that's not for myself, right? Okay, why don't you say 3?
3.
Yeah, you.
Okay.
I'm gonna type for you, and you say them.
I am grateful that I'm dyslexic because I'm able to connect things that other people don't connect. I am grateful for parents that esteemed abilities and made me think these are great abilities. And with those abilities come responsibility. So I'm grateful for parents who spoke those those truths into my life. And I am grateful, I think, for my ability to take difficult concepts and make them simple. I try to think about why do I do that? But I think it really comes natural for me to take difficult concepts and make them simple. So those are 3 things that I have gratitude about myself.
I think I got it. All right, there's Dan Potter. What about you? We want to hear in the chat. What are you grateful about for yourself? I think for me, I would say I am grateful that it is so easy for me to love people and to include other people in things. Let me see. Am I writing this down? Let's see. Include.
She's got her journal going.
Okay, got my little notebook going. Okay, include people. This is a hard question, honestly. This is easy for you because you're really good at self-care. I honestly learned a lot of self-care by watching and learning from Dan. Yeah. Let me see. What else? Can you help me? Can you give me
Can I help you be gratitude for yourself? No.
Okay. Include people. Oh, let me see. This is hard. I think I got one. It's hard for me.
I could make this long list for her.
Let's jump over to David. David's got it humming here.
Wait.
Active mind, healthy body. Maybe I'll be triggered by some of these things.
Maybe you will.
Active mind, healthy body, and curious. Yes, David, those are true about you. Lydia says, I'm grateful that I'm active, have a problem-solving mind, and enjoy being part of something. Awesome. Oops. Okay, got my ringer going on. Slightly distracted there. I think I would also say, let's see, I love to include people. I think I have a lot of joy. Yeah, I have a lot of joy. And it's easy for me to laugh because I see things funny. I have a good sense of humor. I think I'll go with that. Let me see. Shall I just write it here in the chat? Can you help me remember what I said?
Something about people, something about joy.
Include.
While you're doing that, David says, active mind, definitely healthy body, yes, and curious. And they say curiosity killed the cat, but it captured the kid. And for you, David, you are a very curious person, and that moves you forward.
Yeah, we said, Lydia, Roseanne said, I'm grateful that I'm very optimistic, that I'm good in making new friends, and I'm not afraid to take risks. Me too, good. Roseanne. I could have put that on my list too.
Yep.
Not afraid to take risks. Direne, I'm grateful for insights after reading God's words and be able to use these empowering words and encouraging others in need at the moment. Thank you for that. That's great. You can keep writing. Please write this challenge. It's not so easy, especially for me, but you guys are humming with it. The fourth on our list
is good.
Don't be afraid to say no. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, I would love to unpack that. There are some times that we kill ourselves because we don't say no. There are some things that you should say no to. Read the Bible. Jesus, he said no to some things. I'm going to go to a quiet place instead. I think there are times that you have to unplug. I mean, this is one of the things I think is a blessing about this COVID time is there's a lot of us that we didn't say no to ourselves, but the world around us said no.
Yeah.
And we had to stop. And I think a lot of us grew as a result. And so what that means for all of us is get used to FOMO. Get used to, what does FOMO stand for? It's
fear of missing out.
Miss out sometimes. Just say no because you need more sleep, or you need to put your feet up, or you need to do something else. You need to go for a walk in the woods. And you can't do that if you're saying yes to everything.
Or face mask or a blanket. Yep, that's right. Ben says, I'm happy to have a creative head that can think in complex patterns. I'm super happy to have a personality to be able to talk to anyone, anywhere.
Yeah.
And lastly, grateful to have a philosophical mentality that I need to think about and approach subjects critically. Pretty hard to think about a gratitude list. Yes, it is.
It's good stuff.
That's really good. Thank you for taking the moment. David wants to know, what makes it hard for people to say no?
I think what makes it hard for me is that we actually fill our tank when we allow other people to fill it. We don't usually fill our own tank. So when we say yes to people, we are making them happy. If we make them happy, their happiness spills over to us. So we use them to actually fill our tank. And I think we're so scared of rejection that we say yes to everything. You have to take a risk. You have to be brave. You have to be vulnerable to say no. And some of us aren't there yet. And we need to get there if we're going to care for ourselves.
Yeah, great thoughts. Tell us what you're thinking about that as well. So here's a list of 4 from the mind.
Snap that if you haven't snapped it, though. It's just a beginning list for sure.
Yeah, it just gets us started. Positive affirmations, confront negative thoughts, gratitude lists. Don't be afraid to say no.
The mind is a terrible thing to waste. Don't waste yours.
What else, from your perspective, is a way for you to care for yourself with your mind? What sets you up to do that? What does that look like? What would you add to this list? Put that right in the chat. We're really looking forward to hearing from you. And I think in my mind, there's 2 things that really help me. And I've mentioned the one about my journaling and my reflection. The second is having conversation with people. I am an external processor. And so I don't always, I'm learning to confront negative thoughts, and I'm learning to know what I'm thinking about. But as I hear myself talk, and Dan has blessed me with he's got 2 amazing listening ears, and he uses them often with me. But as I have conversations with Dan and other friends, I help train my mind, and I help care for my own mind.
Here's something very, very simple. Probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, Susie and I heard someone say, only successful people make their bed in the morning. Very simple statement. Only successful people make their bed in the morning. Now, up to that point, I have to admit, I had not made my bed every morning. Matter of fact,
Dan's parents can confirm this.
Very rarely had I made my bed. Well, this statement came, and this was a mental statement. Only successful people make their bed in the morning. So I want you to see something. That's our bed. Now, I did not make that because we were doing the Duzie live today. I made that because I wanted today to be successful. It's very interesting that in the morning, when Susie and I wake up, one of the first things we do is and it's a bit of a joke now, but we say, do we want to be successful today? And we make our bed. It is a mental trigger that we are going to start our day right. I have no idea if making your bed has anything to do with success.
but I appreciate it.
It is a mental trigger now for me. I make my bed. I've set myself up for success. It's just something that I do in my mind. It's a practice.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so I'm waiting for anybody to add things. I don't see you adding them, so I'm not quite sure. We'll take any of your thoughts anytime. But shall we cruise on to the body?
Ooh, body.
Woo, okay, the body. How do you self-care for the body?
I have to tell you a story. This morning I was taking a shower, and I realized the shower at my son's house has got smaller in the last 3 weeks that I've been here. I was doing so well doing COVID, losing weight. And this morning it was like, what has happened in 3 weeks? This is unbelievable. Not a whole lot of self-care when it comes to the body. I've tried to work still on getting my steps in and everything, but it's just so much time sitting and eating, and then, hey, let's get up and have something else to eat. And oh my goodness. And so I have to really look at getting a new shower or something, because this, Susie and
or something.
I told Susie about this, and it was like, okay, when we leave here on Thursday, we have to be very, very specific and care for our body, what we eat, how we exercise.
Back at it. Yeah. And an honest confession, I did so good. I had over 100 days of not only my steps, but exercising every day. And somehow when we went on this road trip here, all of our rhythms changed, and I stopped having that intentional exercise. And once again, we're going back at it.
Dakota the other day did not sit on my lap. He sat on my belly. And I thought to myself, I do not need to walk around with a beanbag on my belly for my grandson. So these are things that I need to work on.
Okay, so Rob says, feed, stimulate your mind, creativity, logic, art, research, however you're wired. Yes.
So
yes.
Good, Rob.
Some people also would add to that, like read a book is very good for the mind. Love that. Thank you for adding those things, Robin. Keep adding any of the things that you're thinking about. Let's look for a moment. We've got 4 starting points to body. And at any time, you can add some other areas that really help you take care of yourself when we're thinking of our body. The first and top one that's making a difference for us, find new and consistent ways to exercise. The article that I was reading that I took it from said, find new ways to exercise. And for me, I had to add consistent, something that really, as we're saying, will keep it going. I went for that 100 days, and then what happened? I didn't stay consistent. So for my body, I feel better. I'm able to produce better. My mind is better. My spirit is better. I burn the negative toxins when I exercise. So that exercise piece is very important to me.
Well, I don't like to exercise. You've probably noticed that, but I like to juggle. And one of the things I did is I went out and I bought balls that were weighted. They were 2 pounds each. And so I juggle those things. When I hit 300, my arms are so sore, but it's an exercise I actually enjoy. And so many times I will start my exercise routine by doing my juggling, because it's something I love it. I love it. I love it. 100, and there's a sense of accomplishment, and I'm juggling. That opens a door for me to then say, so what else can I do? I don't like sit-ups, but I've made them fun. I've done some things to make them fun. One thing that's not fun is doing sit-ups when my dog is around, because he really likes to sit on my head. So those things you just work towards.
Yeah. So I'm seeing in the chat here, I'm just jumping back. David says, everyone should read. Reading has so many amazing benefits. I love to read. I love to research. What kind of books do you love to read when you're taking care of yourself? For me, I love to learn. I actually did download on my audiobook some novels, because I haven't really been doing that. And we're going to start another big road trip, and we're going to have some more chances to read.
When I got to Joshua's house, he gave me this book, and it's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And I love this because it's so unique. Look at it's like handwritten with sketches. I am enjoying this book.
Benny, you could write a book like this.
It's not going to take me intellectually to any new place, but it is so inspiring to me.
I hear it is actually going to take you to a new intellectual.
I haven't finished it yet, but this is good. So sometimes I'm reading what is the latest book on the subject I'm really fired up about, but sometimes you take a little detour and you're going to find great joy there.
Yeah, David says, I'm a huge advocate for exercise. I would encourage everyone to find an exercise that you enjoy doing and find a way to do it regularly. The mental benefits of exercise are not talked about often enough. That's right. That's right. And David, I know that you have a routine. We'd love to know what your exercise routine looks like. I think you do it in the morning. If you can just tell us, if you don't mind, what do you do since you're such a huge advocate for it? So Rob has it too. Is it Rob? You have this book. What does he have?
What does Rob have that you don't have?
I don't know. It's amazing, but I'm guessing it's the book potentially.
Well, let's move on to the body. Stick to a healthy sleep schedule. That is so important. When we left Atlanta to drive to Seattle, I thought it'd be so amazing to drive as long as I could drive. We drove
the book.
We drove 24 hours straight before we stopped.
Switching off and on. Yeah.
I am just now catching up. That was like 3 weeks ago. I'm just now catching up. When you are tired, it's like you are drunk. And you need to make sure you have a schedule and you keep that. It drives me crazy sometimes that I'll be communicating with Matt or Dave Taylor, and they're like, "Hey, sorry, I got to go to bed." It's like, what? We're because on my time, I still have a lot of hours before I go to bed. But they're very, very consistent. It's time to go to bed because it's part of their body routine. That is very important.
Yeah. And different ones of us need different amounts of sleep. So what is it that you need? And find out what it is that you need. For me, it's actually the best if I can get 8 to 9 hours of sleep at night consistently. And that's very, very healthy for me. We run such a crazy life and we try to get things done before we go to sleep. And there's a lot of to-do lists. And so many times the sleep is late, or we might be watching a movie late or hanging out with people, and morning always comes.
And one of the greatest decisions ever made was you don't take your phone to bed. It was really good those 2 days that we practiced it.
Yeah, when we're just like spending endless amount of time. So what does it take for us to get extra sleep? So if you have a morning routine that starts at a certain time and you need this much sleep for you to function well and to take care of yourself, then the ending time at night. My dad always says you can't burn the candle at both ends. And I think that's so true. Like if you try to get up early in the morning and you stay up late, you're just decreasing your sleep quality, your sleep schedule.
So let's go on to the next one. Spend time outside in nature. For me, that is that does wonders. Just to get out in nature, just to see the trees, hear the birds. Yesterday when we were at the zoo, just to stand there and watch an owl. It was unbelievable, the benefits, the life benefits for my body, the rejuvenating that took place just by encountering God's creation. So that is one way that I care for myself. I do that quite often when I walk, or I just stop and I notice something in nature.
All right. And body, this one was interesting, came up in research about self-care of your body is when you spend time with your loved ones. So this is a bit of a combination of what you do socially. So when you are together with people that you love, that you appreciate, that you tank yourself up, that it actually is self-care to spend time with loved ones.
So this is really important. Self-care is not just you being off by yourself in a chair. That can be it, but self-care also can be when you're with loved ones.
Yeah, for example, we just had the 4th of July here, which is our Independence Day in America. And we spent the time out on a lake with family. A bunch of our friends and family members have paddle boards. And so we were out on the paddle boards in the lake laughing. And then we came back to the house and we had a cookout with all the fun stuff that you put on your burgers and the chips and hot dogs. And just spending that time for me was really a great version of self-care. The people that I love and care about.
David's exercise program.
All right. So David says, I exercise 6 days a week. I've actually changed my routine a little, but I recently discovered that for elite athletes, 8 out of 10 sessions would be classified as easy. Too many of us, when we start to exercise, we kill ourselves and never want to try again. So,
preach it.
So easy exercise, hey?
Preach it.
Okay, so let's move on to self-care of the spirit.
Yep.
Talk to us about that. What is that?
Well, the spirit is that connection outside of us. It's that connection with God. It's a bit mysterious, but there is that. I hear a lot of people today say, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And I'm not totally sure what all that means and how it all works, but I know that there is a connection between me and the unseen God. There's a connection there that I want to grow. I want to feed that. And so self-care would not just be what I do in my mind and my body, but how I actually grow this unseen connection that I know is there. How do I step into the mysteries? How do I embrace those things that I know surround me, the God who loves me? Within that whole, I love the spirit. I love talking about the soul. I love talking about these things because it's like you can get to a point where you go, and then it's like, I don't know if I get it totally. But there is that area in my life that reaches beyond me, beyond my borders, into a realm of the spirit. God has created us physical beings, but also spiritual beings. I want to grow that.
Yeah. So here are 4 that we've highlighted from the studies and from our own personal life. And if you haven't already and you want to add anything to what our body self-care techniques that you find are helpful, please add that right there in the chat. So the first one on our list is feed your soul with regular Sabbath rest. Talk to us about that. I know this is like one of the things that you love to talk about, think about, process. Yeah,
God did not create us as machines just to produce. I think sometimes we get the idea that our role on earth is produce. It's not. I find it interesting, as soon as the children of Israel left Egypt, one of the first things that God gave back to them was Sabbath, take a day off, because for 400 years they became machines. And they didn't realize that the world works well when they even stop. God wants us to take a break. There is so much even research on the need to do this. There are some people that take, like they work 50 minutes and they take a rest for 10. There are a lot of different patterns. God set it up that we would work for 6, rest for 1. In our life, if you're going to feed your spirit, you need to have that rest.
Right. So you notice it says feed your soul, feed your spirit. What is your soul? What is your spirit? What is different?
And I just want to tell
what is the difference of those two?
If you're in ministry and Sunday is get to church early, open the door, and then turn on the heat, and then practice the piano, and then sing in the choir, and then lead worship, and then teach a Sunday school class, and then this, and then get home and make your food, and that's not a Sabbath rest day. I just want to tell you that right now. You need to have another day, because that is not actually a good idea. It's a God idea, and it will actually feed your spirit.
Yeah. So tell us also about spirit and soul. What's the difference between spirit and soul, and is it important for this day?
Rob, you're there. Why don't you quickly? I could do that, but Rob and I had a discussion about this in the past. Rob, if you would, you write down in the chat, what is the difference between the spirit and soul? I remember that conversation we had. I don't know what country it was in, but
over to you, Rob.
You had a really simple way of saying, here's the spirit, here's the soul.
Okay, over to you. We'll come back to that, I guess, Rob, if you're willing to do that. The second point here on the spirit is intentionally connect with God in meditation. We call it a time. So basically, you are giving yourself space to be with God. Now, this rejuvenates it as self-care for your spirit. God, you might have a verse or a thought or a concept, and you go into a space and say, God, speak to me. God, share with me what you want. And you just shh. Now, ideally, we do that for 30 minutes. And the second piece of it, you see the picture straight here above me, is in nature. Many times I get self-care of my spirit as I'm in nature, as I give that space to God, and I'm allowing him to show me pictures from nature, or I'm just refreshed by being with God. I always go hoping, wishing that God will speak to me and say something to me. Many times he doesn't, but that refreshment comes from giving that space for God to connect with us in our spirit.
For me, in meditation with God, have my time, there's always imagination involved. I'm always sitting there imagining God is there, or imagining what God is saying to me, and he speaks through my imagination. But I have to take that to actually hear what he's saying. Another one is to make or listen to music. I know for a lot of people that feeds your spirit. That just the creation of making music. It may be worship. There are times that I will turn on some songs that were very influential in my life in the 80s, and they take me to that very special place with God. They weren't even written by Christians, but there's that connection that I step into it. Wow, it takes me to that place. So make or listen to music.
Yeah, and the final one, experience the wonders of God. How can you experience the wonders of God? This is a spirit connection with God that feeds and cares for yourself. And when we just are like, wow, God, you are amazing. You made that. You have inputted into me. Look what you're doing in the world. And how can that actually look?
There's a singer from England, Martin Joseph, and Martin Joseph wrote a song many years ago called Treasure the Questions.
Yeah.
I think many times as followers of Jesus,
David does that.
We treasure the answers. And the answers will never bring us into that wonder of God like the questions, especially the questions that we can never answer. Experience the wonder of God by stepping into those things and just have awe.
All right, so Rob says, I honestly can't remember. It must have been a moment of inspiration.
It was so
Can you
good.
remember any of that moment of inspiration?
In fact, when I was working on this in the last couple of days, I was thinking, at this point, I would love to interview Rob because he had so much. It was when we were talking about Suko and Zoe and Numa, and you were bringing these connections together. But anyway, it has to do with the spirit is our connection to God. But the soul is very, very close to that. But it has to do with our connection to ourselves, because are we alive in our spirit? When you look, it says that the spirit and soul continue on after this life. I can't go in. To me, that would be a whole nother. We're at almost an hour right now. That's a whole nother discussion. But I would challenge you to go through and look at what is the difference, because it's something I get them very, very close. But the Bible does say that the word of God is so sharp that it actually can divide spirit and soul, which I find fascinating. That to me, they're so close, but the word of God is so sharp and so real that actually brings those two things apart. I don't know what that means, but it's exciting.
So Rob says, I'm less clear on the difference now. The life source, breath being spirit, and the non-physical otherness being soul. Okay, we'll take that, and thank you very much.
We're just going to have to sit down together and have that discussion.
Excuse me. Yeah, so spirit. What else helps you take care of your spirit? We'd love to see that in the chat.
We've come to the end of our hour, but we just want to wrap this up quickly with you.
Yeah, so we've talked about self-care of the mind, of the body, the spirit, and all those different parts and how they influence each other. And again, the verse from the very beginning about how Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. So don't forget that all of those are interwoven together. But today we've been focusing on self-care. What does it take for you to care for yourself so that you'll have the overflow, so that you'll be healthy, and also so that you will be able to overflow to others, but others will overflow to you.
Yeah, Rob is using some of the Old Testament words there. Zoe, those are some of the New Testament words, but they mean the same thing, life, but life in different ways. Life being vibrancy, life being breath, life being of the spirit. I've spent the last couple years just looking at these words, and they're fascinating. That's part of the wonder of God for me.
Direne is right in on that. Thank you, Direne. We encourage all of you. What is your takeaway so far today? So something that you've learned, something that you've caught, it's been new, you've been reminded of. So Direne says, my takeaway, self-care. sleep schedule, and have shh time. Eat healthy, love myself, and listen to worship songs. Find God as I start the day. Care for others, afraid not to say no. Read books, exercise. Thanks so much, Susie and Pastor Dan. You're both amazing and always inspiring. Blessings, everyone. Thank you, Dyrene. Wow. She shared her notes with us. We really appreciate that.
So speaking of a Sabbath, I just want you all to know that next week for Duzie Live, we're going to take a Sabbath because we are driving across America. We do not think in North Dakota there is going to be internet for us to do this. So we're going to skip a week. And maybe you can put it in your schedule to attend Duzie Live, but then just have that personal time with you. Take this time to Sabbath, even just for an hour next week on Tuesday. Then we're going to come back the next Tuesday, and we're going to be doing a 5 or 6 week rollout towards the Fully Alive Revolution, where we're going to be looking intensely at Zoe. We're going to be looking at how do you design your life. We're going to be looking at how do you explore your life. How do you build a tribe? How do you have an impact in the world? And how do you thrive moving into a course that we've put together? So we're going to be sort of speeding things up after this week break. So you put on your seatbelt, come along with us on that journey.
Yeah, that's great. So Dyrene is just saying takeaway. She wrote self-care out as an acronym, and all that came from that. So awesome. I didn't catch that straight up. Thank you for that. Helen says Sabbath is not being fully busy with the church. Thank you, Helen. David says I had a clarifying thought link. Corinthians' views on love with the concept of self-love.
So good.
Oh, David, can you unpack that a little bit?
So
We
good.
would love for that. Anybody else? What is your takeaway as we're sort of winding down here? We just would love to hear, because when you share your takeaway, we all benefit from it. We're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that, or good reminder.
And I would say any of you that are willing, if you would go to the Fully Alive Revolution Facebook page and put your takeaway, put your thoughts, and add hashtag far out ! That would be great.
And I just put the link up there. If you didn't have it, the Fully Alive Revolution is a place that we like to be active in chatting and continuing to discuss what's going on here. So Rob says regular self-care will mean I can give more. It's not selfish or self-indulgent.
So true.
That's right. That's right, Rob. David's going to shoot off. Thank you, David.
Great.
It's been fun. Takeaway, Roseanne said, slowing down makes you more productive. Yeah. So we've got the idea.
That was my takeaway as well, because as we've been looking at this, it's like, wow, it's time to be more productive. I need to slow down.
Yeah, I think slowing down is mine as well, and taking those moments just to be and not necessarily to do. Yeah. It's been awesome to be with you here on Duzie Live. Don't forget that your life is a remarkable story, an adventure that only you can create.
We exist to motivate and equip you to live fully alive.
Today on this Duzie Live, we've been talking about self-care in our mind, in our body, and in our spirit.
We want you to live so that you love your life, your world, and your God. My name is Dan.
My name is Susie, and together we're a Duzie.
So what we want you to do today is to
live fully and to love fully. Thank you so much. God bless you all. It's been awesome to be with you.
And we're going to talk about this again at 2:00. So if you have more to say, want to discuss more, we'll see you there.
Thanks again for joining us for Duzie Live. Have an awesome day, evening, whatever your day brings for you. God bless you.
Bye.